bushel and it barely is enough to cover costs. If you want to try the Grainco elevator, they might give you a better level. They're still using an older moisture system and might not dock as much. Wes shook his head. Oh, cost of the gas drive into a new location will eat into the margins, Wes said, putting the cap back on. You people are the reason the family farms are dying. I'm just a lowly nighttime agent at a grain elevator. People above my pay grade set the prices, Wes. I run the machine. Wish that I had a say in this, I really do. The aging farmer paced, mumbling to himself as he did, trying to shake loose the anger from his body. His snit was moderate compared to others. One guy took a swing at me. Truth was, they all were right. The moisture limits were off, and the big ag company I worked for wanted to maximize profits by shortchanging farmers. Every night I stared into the eyes of broken men and gave them bad news. It ate at my soul. I was a force multiplier for misery. Oh, Jesus Christ and his crown of thorns, Wes finally said. Just take the corn. I'll figure something out. I'm sorry, Wes, truly. He waved me off. I don't want to hear it. Just take it. I'll be in my truck. He slammed the door as he left. It rattled the windows and knocked small knickknacks off my desk. As soon as he stormed off, my boss's office door squeaked open. He gone? He asked from the safety of his office. Yep. The door opened wide, and Larry, my fastidious boss, walked out laughing. Oh, thank God he left. He seemed heated. The faint smell of whiskey followed Larry's arrival. Larry took nips from a flask all the time and assumed that he was getting away with it. Larry was wrong. A common occurrence around here. He is heated, and he isn't alone. I've heard it all night. They'll learn to love the new rates, Larry said, staring through the blinds, or their corn will rot. Blood whooshed in my ears and I grit my teeth. My tongue was begging to give out a lashing, but I held it firm. There wasn't a ton of decent paying gigs in this town anymore, and I needed a place where I could study in peace. The night shift at the grain elevator was the perfect spot for me. Speaking of rot, around near Silo 10 I caught a funky, musty smell earlier. When you get a chance, go check it out. No sensor warnings and I didn't feel any heat. It's still worth a glance though. I can't have a fire now. Margins are tighter than a honey hole. A disgusting metaphor aside, he wasn't wrong. The price changes had wrecked everybody down the line, save the big ag companies. I glanced out at Wes, muttering to himself outside. Should we try to smooth things over? Larry, still lingering at the window, shook his head. No, I'm not going down there, he said, turning to me. But it might not hurt for you to smooth things over. We can't have everybody run into the Grainco elevator. What should I tell him? I don't know, the rates are temporary. We understand his frustration. Things will get back to normal soon, stuff like that. Are the rates temporary? Larry laughed. When have you ever heard of a company cutting into its profits on purpose? You want me to lie? Don't be such a Boy Scout, Larry said, walking away from the window and grabbing the latest issue of Farm Worker magazine. I gotta take the Browns to the Super Bowl. It's about to smell musty in here and it ain't gonna have nothing to do with wet corn, he said, cracking himself up. Go on and get. I'll be a minute. He left for the bathroom and I sighed. Wes might sock me in the jaw, but whatever stench Larry was about to release in the bathroom would be worse. A bruised jaw was worth the risk. I zipped up my hoodie as soon as I got outside. Since fall had tiptoed closer, the nights at the complex had gone from pleasant to, I don't really want to go out if I don't have to. My breath was visible and the cold stung my nose and the tips of my ears. The wind rustled through the fabric, sending shivers up my spine. I stuffed my hands into my pockets and I made my way over to Wes. He had parked his rig over the dump gate and was in the process of opening the bottom hatch of his truck. Once he caught me heading toward him, he stopped. The cold had helped to extinguish his fury. The man was more apologetic than mad. "I hate the winter," I said as a way of greeting. Same. My hands get so chapped that they bleed, even with gloves on. I envy the bears who get to hibernate through this shit." Wes smiled and his shoulders dropped. His eyes went to the ground, letting his thoughts gather steam before bringing them level with me. "Oh, sorry about in there." I held up my hands. "Don't, I get it. So many farmers have goddamned me lately that I'm starting to wonder if the big man has agreed to help. A lot of God-fearing folks forget the Lord don't like his name taken in vain." "Amen," I said. "I get why, but I'm just a dude that pushes a button. Forces larger than me are calling all the shots." Wes nodded. "I can't imagine it's easy. There are worse fates, but I hate disappointing folks. Be straight with me. Why did they raise the moisture level barrier?" I shrugged. "Money?" Wes spat. "I can't wring blood from a gosh darn stone. They're gonna squeeze, though. Squeeze too hard and you break the rock." "You're right." "I should have sold the farm last year," Wes said, resigned. "I offered more than what it was worth. Told my pappy about the offer, and the man damn near shed a tear at the thought of us moving on. That man lost a finger and his eyes didn't even well up once." "How's he been?" Wes waggled his hand. Has good days and bad, but it's all on a downhill slope. It's spread to his lungs, and just a matter of time now." "Sorry about that," I said, patting his shoulder. "I lost my dad 2 years ago, and I still feel the hurt." Wes nodded thanks and turned away. He wiped away a tear, but I wasn't going to call it out. We all need to grieve. "You want me to fire it up?" "Yes, sir," he said over his shoulder. He unlatched the bottom hatch of his truck, and the flow of thousands of corn kernels filled the night air. A grain elevator is exactly what it sounds like. Farmers park their trucks over a grate, let the seeds fall into a pit where a belt with little platforms drags the corn up to the top of a silo. Our elevator has 16 silos on site, and come harvest season, they'll all fill up. That's when the money comes in. It's also when things get dangerous. You wouldn't think that grain storage is a high-risk job, and mostly you'd be right. But dust stalks the silos. Falling from heights is frequent enough. Sometimes the air is putrid from unseen decaying matter. And worse, fine dust and built-up gases ignite and explode. About a year ago, 2 towns over, a silo exploded. Stuffed with hardened kernels, it was like an industrial-level pipe bomb. Killed a guy. "You hear about that farmhand at the Braverman farm?" Wes had asked. "No, what happened?" The belt below us squeaked. If you closed your eyes, the corn movers sounded like a rain stick. It could be pleasant, less so if you hear it settle from inside a silo. If you're close enough to hear millions of kernels slide around, it'll be the last thing that you hear. "Oh, he was breaking up a crust and he slipped inside. He was dead before the paramedics got there," Wes said, crossing himself. "Wasn't wearing his harness either." 5 seconds to get trapped. 30 to die, Wes said. I don't even think it took that long. Moisture is the enemy in the bins. The corn can clump together and crust over a void. You step on that and you tumble down. Millions of kernels collapse. The weight crushes you into a pancake. You go in the grain and odds are you don't come out. I don't know about you, but $16 an hour with no benefits ain't worth being crushed to death by corn kernels. Braverman always cuts corners, I said. Can't say I'm shocked. Costly mistake. The family's gonna sue, surprised if Braverman doesn't just sell the land and call it a day. And Granco's been sniffing around anyhow. I offered Wes a cigarette and he took it. We moved away from the clanking elevator to talk in a quieter place. Ducked behind the office and lit up like we were 2 high school kids hiding from our parents. "You're in school, right?" Yes, sir, trying to finish off my business degree. You want to work in agriculture? I want to stay as far away from ag as possible, I said, taking a drag. I'd like to get out of this area altogether, if I can help it. Is your mama gonna miss you? Nah, she's living her life. Bingo almost every night with friends. I went once and she didn't hit. Called me a cooler and said that I couldn't come back. Wes laughed. That's a blunt assessment. That's mama. The woman doesn't let a topic pass without speaking her piece on it. Off in the distance, someone slammed a stick against the side of a silo. The reverberations echoed in the dark. Wes and I looked at one another to confirm that we had both heard the same thing. What the hell was that? Probably teens messing around. Ain't much to do around here except drink and raise a little cane. And Grant Platt told me the other night that somebody came and put up about half a dozen scarecrows in his fields. Noticed them that evening, but when he went to get them in the morning, they were gone. I took a drag off my smoke and tried to hide my concern. Truth was, the last few weeks, I'd been hearing noises around the complex. Shuffling, banging, whispers. The noises were odd, sure, but nothing to call a preacher about. What was curious, though, was where they were coming from. The rows of silos. Everywhere, too. Near the base, at the top, along the sides. Banging against the walls like somebody was trapped inside. Industrial complexes are rife with odd sights and sounds, but something about these didn't sit right with me. I mentioned it to Larry the other day, but he wasn't too concerned. Told me that it was the corn settling in the silos. I didn't buy it, but since I had zero desire to go inside and investigate, I let it go. Silo 10 was the epicenter. I asked my boy about the scarecrow thing and he mentioned it being some social media trend. He said, shaking his head in disgust. A way to scare people and record their reactions. Sounds mean to me, but the whole darn world seems to be trending that way these days. I heard the sound again. Someone dragged a stick against the metal ribbon at the bottom of the silos. Reminded me of a machine gun firing or a baseball card jammed in your bike spokes. I took another drag of my smoke and my hand twitched. Gotta be kids, I said, dropping my cigarette and crushing it under my boot. Let's put the fear of God into them. Wes nodded. When in doubt, turn to the good book. We headed toward the silos, moving fast and as quietly as boots on gravel could be. Whispering voices found our ears. Teens. When we got to the silo where they were hiding, I wrapped my hand against it. The dull thud echoed around us. A few people tried to suppress their laughter. It was coming from the next silo over. It was kids messing around. Though a weight had lifted off my shoulders, smoldering anger replaced the void. I had enough shit to deal with, and I didn't need to add running off clout-chasing teens to my list. I motioned for Wes to go around the silo counterclockwise and sneak up on them from behind. Let the man surprise them and give them a taste of their own medicine. I would go the opposite direction and hopefully catch them. If they ran well, I was gonna let them run. I don't get paid to chase people down. The kids shushed each other and dragged that stick against these silos' ribs again. This time they went slowly, the dead end ringing like a cracked church bell. I waited until they stopped and then took off, hoping to catch them in the act. As I rounded the corner, I came skidding to a stop on the gravel. A poorly made scarecrow loomed over me. He hung loosely from a stake and barely driven into the hardened ground. Even though I expected a scarecrow around the corner, the sight still surprised me. Oh shit, look at his face, one of the teen boys said from the shadows. He's scared as hell. Peals of laughter from about 4 boys and girls standing in the dark of Silo 11. This is private property. You can't be back here. Oh, relax, bro. It was a dumb prank, a guy said, walking into the dim moonlight. He was wearing a Letterman jacket with so many patches that you would think that he had served in the military, not the track team, Oh, it's just for fun. A girl said not brave enough to walk into the light. We didn't mean nothing by it. The large fellow walked up next to his friend, big all over with a head the size of a backpack. He laughed, raspy and halting like a man straining to breathe, and he waved his hand in front of his face. How do you work here, bro? These silos smell like 10 kinds of ass. Maybe he likes the smell of ass, the letterman said, pointing and laughing. They all chuckled and blood rushed to my cheeks. You're trying to get this man in trouble with his boss, Wes said, stepping out of the shadows. They jumped worse than I had. A little revenge isn't so bad. Ain't justice, just revenge flipped upside down. Jesus Christ, the kid said. Watch your mouth, Dennis Temple, Wes said, his deepened dad voice coming out. Oh yeah, I know who you are, who all of you are. He turned his attention back to Dennis. I know your pa didn't raise you to blaspheme the Lord's name or curse out at strangers now, did he? No sir, he didn't, Dennis said, his eyes on the ground. How many of y'all are there? After a few seconds, 2 girls in matching red hoodies walked out. Wes shook his head. I can't imagine none of y'all's parents would think highly of you bothering a working man just trying to earn his daily bread, Wes said, pulling the scarecrow out of the ground and handing it over. Think your pa would be happy with somebody screwing with him at the mill? No, sir. Apologize to this man, erase that video, and get on back home. And Dennis in his gaggle turned to me and mumbled apologies, and then he erased the video, holding up his phone to prove that he did. Once Wes was happy with the responses, he softened. Now there ain't nothing wrong with having fun, just not at someone else's expense. We were young once and we did our fair share of rabble-rousing. Just don't do it at some innocent man's expense. Y'all understand? Yes, sir, Dennis said. He turned to me. Sorry, man, I meant nothing by it. I softened. I just don't want to see anybody get hurt. This is a dangerous place. Our alarm system squawking drowned my voice out. Red lights started blinking on top of the silos. We both glanced up and a sinking sensation rumbled in my stomach. I turned to the now genuinely nervous teens and shooed them away. They didn't hesitate. Wes craned his head up to the lights. What's that mean? Honestly, I've never heard them go off. In the distance, the office door slammed open, Larry's booming voice calling out. I turned to Wes. I don't think he's in a good mood. The devil has more good times than old Larry. We started back for the office. As soon as we came out of the line of silos, Larry pointed his folded magazine at me. Where the hell were you? Chasing off a few kids that had snuck onto the property. Why are the alarms going off? Something wrong with the elevator. It's what alarms usually mean, don't it? And you say you're in college, huh? Larry said, shaking his head. Useless as teats on a boar hog. I've never seen them go off before is all, I said, swallowing my anger. Don't sweat it, son, Wes said, patting me on the back and nodding at Larry. Larry never even finished high school and look where he is. I chuckled and Larry fumed. The friendly joke got under his skin. Wes was needling and found a vein. It was Larry's turn to strike. If your wet corn broke my machine, repairs are gonna come out of your pocket, Larry said, attempting a joke. It Hindenburged and we walked to the elevator in silence. Once there, it was obvious that something had jammed up the works because the belts weren't moving anymore. Wes's corn had emptied from his truck and was now all in the underground storage pit. A rock or something scooped up from the harvest might have found its way into the elevator and got stuck. I'll shut down the power and climb into the pit to get a look. If there's a jam, it's gotta be in there, Larry said. He handed me a flashlight and nodded down at the pit access hatch. I can't wait, I said, taking the flashlight. There was a ping as my feet hit each rung. There's no light down here because there isn't any need. The corn falls and the elevator belts scoop it up. Colonels don't need to see the elevator to catch it. They just get swept away. I had only come down here a few times and that was more than enough. The ground slopes toward the belt, so once you get off the ladder, you have to crab walk to stay stable. If there is a clog, it was probably where the belt goes vertical, delivering the kernels up to another conveyor belt where they ride until they're dumped into a silo. Those turns on the conveyor belts are notorious for clogs and are hard to fix without the proper tools. Operators and agents can try to dig out the clogs, but it doesn't go well. Repairmen call them finger strippers for a reason. I hit the bottom rung and my feet slid out from under me as I stepped down to the cement floor. I shone the light at the elevator. There wasn't much corn left, but there was still enough that it piled near the belt. I scanned my light along the bottom of the ramp, looking for any obstruction. "What's the holdup?" Larry yelled down, his dumb voice echoing in the pit. "So far so good," I yelled back. "Gonna get a closer look at the belts." Don't go too close, I don't want OSHA in our business." I rolled my eyes and took another step down the steep slope. My foot skidded in some loose dirt, but I caught myself before I face-planted. I chuckled at my luck inside. Screw this whole freaking complex. As I dragged the light across the backside of the elevator, something dull and gray came into view. It was enough to get me closer. Inching along, I finally reached the belt and placed a hand on it for stability. What in the world is that? In the pit's dark, I spied a split-open gray watermelon half buried in corn kernels. It must have been there for a while because the smell of rot grew with each inch that I got closer. I tucked my nose into my shirt. "There's something weird down here," I yelled up. "Yeah, you," Larry said, laughing to himself. I ignored him and shifted my light to the right. A blackened, twisted vine snaked out from the watermelon. A seed germinating down here wasn't impossible, but to grow to this size. I followed the vine until it ended at a pile of clothes. I was about to reach over and grab them when the flashlight beam bounced off a pair of coal black eyes. Oh shit. My fingers loosened and I dropped the flashlight, shutting it off. I scrambled back up the incline, but my foot caught on some loose kernels, and I fell face first into the concrete. My teeth caught against my tongue and my mouth filled with the coppery tang of blood. My smashed nose stung, and the gushing painted my lips and chin crimson. I had a hard time breathing without my nostrils whistling like a bored kid in church. Shaking off my growing ailments, I scrambled up the ladder, burst out of the top, and rolled away from the hole. I was breathing like I had run a marathon, pitched forward with my hands on my knees. Blood from my nose was pooling on the dirt in front of me. "What the hell is wrong?" Larry asked. "What happened?" "There's something down there." "What?" "I saw eyes." "You sure it's not a raccoon? We got raccoons down there all the time. Hate those thieving things." "I know what a raccoon looks like," I snapped, pinching the bridge of my nose to staunch the bleeding. It did little, but I convinced myself that it was working. "There was a watermelon and something." "Did you leave my flashlight down there?" "Larry, some grace, please," Wes said, his tone scolding. "What? This boy couldn't organize a hen raffle at a poultry farm. The hell does that mean?" I snapped. A stern glower from my boss recalibrated my emotions. "Sorry, I'm hurting is all." "You okay, kid?" Wes asked. No, but I'll live," I said, touching my nostril to see if there was fresh blood still flowing. "Sorry I dropped your flashlight, but I didn't want to get stabbed." "What, did you see a weapon?" Larry asked. I shook my head no. "Then what are you worried about, son?" I was startled it happened so fast. Startled is a fancy word for scared. Fine, I was scared, Larry. You wouldn't be. Larry's scared of missing a meal, but that's about it, Wes said with a grin. Before Larry could shoot back, Wes held up his hands and gave him an affable grin. "Oh, just funnin', big guy. Kid, let me take a gander, huh?" Wes walked over to the hole, pulled out his phone, and stuck his head down. The light wasn't as strong, but it did the work because he caught the eyes staring out at him too. "Well, I'll be pickled," he mumbled. Hey, what are you doing down there?" No response was forthcoming. Without hesitating, Wes climbed down into the pit. "Hey, you can't go down there, it's a liability thing," Larry yelled to no avail. Seconds later, belly laughs came rousing up. "What's so funny?" Larry yelled down. "There's a clown in there." "Oh, there is someone down here, all right. I'll bring him up." I inched closer. My mouth went arid, the moisture sliding to my clammy palms. Finally, Wes came up, trailing someone behind him. As he breached the hole, he yanked up a scarecrow with him. He tossed it on the ground between Larry and me. "Here's your culprit." "Oh, hell's bells, kid. You were afraid of a scarecrow," Larry said in between guffaws. "I didn't know it was a scarecrow." "You didn't even investigate. Even the crows check out scarecrows. How you gonna make it in the city if you can't handle a straw man?" "Why was it down there?" I turned to Wes. "Was it in your truck and fell through?" "Ah, no way. Those kids, maybe." "When would they get down there?" "Well, heck, I don't know." This scarecrow was different from the one that the kids had brought. Theirs was obviously handmade and not very well. Super understuffed with hay. Visible safety pins held the pants to the shirt, to the pillowcase head. Someone crudely drew on the face, made a real mess with the eyes and mouth. This one wasn't that. Outside the mangling that it had taken in the elevator belts, it was pristine. The outfit was a pair of old blue jeans and a gingham shirt with no visible pins. The clothes were so evenly stuffed with hay that they resembled a real person's body. Muscles and everything. The head was an old burlap sack with black buttons sewn on for eyes, and cinched with an ancient length of weather-beaten rope. A jack-o'-lantern's shark-tooth grin stitched in with white thread. Something that you would show off at the county fair, not drop in a grain elevator pit where nobody would see it. "Oh, whatever it is, it's out now. I'm restarting the machine and finishing this up," Larry said as he turned to head back into the office. But then he froze. He shot his hand up and pointed to the top of a silo. "Is that a person up there?" Wes and I followed his finger to the top of Silo 10. The only light up there was the blinking red alarm, but it was enough to outline a person. They weren't moving, just sitting, shoeless feet dangling, and holding on to the light structure. "What in tarnation?" "Ah, Jesus, if they fall, we're screwed," Larry said in a panic. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Get down now." The figure leaned back, their hands letting go, and they tipped off the top of the silo. "Oh shit," Larry said, sprinting. He got there first and came skidding to a stop, sending gravel skipping down the path. I tried to read his face. Was he looking at a horror show? But his dropped jaw and raised eyebrows weren't sending that message. The hell? Wes and I joined him at his side, and the same wave of confusion caught us in its wake. I shook my head hoping to get my synapses firing correctly, but nothing changed. We were staring at the body of another scarecrow. Wes crossed himself. "This ain't natural. Nothing tonight has been." I didn't bother with the divine. I was stuck on the logistics of how a person got onto the silo roof in the first place. We kept the silo ladders latched closed, and they still were. But even if the ladders had been unlatched, climbing on top of the silo was super dangerous in the best of conditions. Hauling up a scarecrow while trying to climb up would be damn near impossible. "Who brought it up there? How?" I said, meaning for it to remain in my mind, but the thought couldn't help but escape into the wider world. Larry's face went from disbelief to anger. "Oh, someone's messing with us, and I don't like it one bit." He turned to me. "Where did those kids go? Did you know their names?" "They left right after we confronted them. I saw them leave." "I know them well enough to know that this ain't them," Wes said. "I don't know what this is, but I know that I don't like it. and I'd like to finish my business and be on my way. Sure, Larry said, his rage cooling into simmering anger. I'll take care of ya. Kid, add this guy to the pile and burn them both. I don't want to hear anything more about scarecrows. The two of them left. I walked to the straw man. The fall had done some damage and an arm had fallen off on impact, but otherwise it was fine. I kicked it to ensure that it wasn't alive or anything. It wasn't, thank God. Hey, considering the fall should have killed you, you look okay. Off in the distance, the grain elevator started back up and I damn near jumped out of my skin. I turned back toward the office. Wes and Larry were standing near the truck scale and arguing over the price changes. The conversation was heated enough that a few spicy words were louder than the elevator's hum. Larry, man, read the room. I turned back to the scarecrow. Chills prickled down my spine. I didn't like this thing, and the urge to kill it and its pal with fire grew like corn in the summer. Alright, dude, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And grabbing his hay-stuffed shirt sleeve, I had dragged his body about 2 feet when the scarecrow let out a faint, painful groan. I dropped the arm. It bounced off the ground, lifeless. Still, I shuffled a few steps back, my eyes never leaving the body. What the hell was that? There was thunking again. I snapped my head toward the silo. Opposite me, somebody dragged a stick slowly against the ribs. I wanted to believe the kids had come back around for another attempt at the video, but my rapidly beating heart told me that that wasn't the case. Wes had laid into them pretty good and, like all teens, they feared getting in trouble. The hair on the back of my neck was at attention. Despite the cool evening, sweat rolled down my nose. I wiped my face with my already sweaty palms and dried them against my dusty pants. My spiking adrenaline made my body tremble. Run or fight. I closed my eyes and let my instincts choose for me. Instead of running off, something that my legs were screaming at my brain to do, I slapped the side of the silo myself. It wasn't as loud or intimidating, but it sent the message that I was still here, damn it. They wouldn't scare me off so easily. Pressing my body against the silo, the metal was warmer than normal. I still needed to check the internal temperature, but dealing with a scarecrow-apalooza was my top problem at the moment. I quietly slid along the metal. My goal was to surprise whoever was there. What I would do after that wasn't exactly clear to me yet. One problem at a time. I took baby steps, careful to not crunch on the gravel. The vibrations through the metal rippled through my body. I was sure that I was about to run into the person. I stilled and gathered my courage and ran toward my unseen foe, screaming bloody murder. The scarecrow's detached arm fell to the ground as I came around the corner. I froze, my brain failing to put together what I had just witnessed. How was the arm moving? Straw feet kicked up gravel as the rest of the body ran away. I circled the silo just in time to catch the hayman turning off the gravel path and disappearing into the shadows. With my wits reaching their natural end, I pulled myself together and did the only sensible thing. I ran. I moved like this thing was chasing me. I hadn't run this fast in years and my body rejected the effort. Joints ached and my lungs burned, but I wasn't stopping until I got back to the office. I got there just as Wes was taking the check from Larry. They stared at me like I had two heads. Larry shook his head and asked, "Oh, what's going on? Where's the scarecrow?" "It ran off," I said between gulps of air. "It ran away." "Well, that's my cue to get along. Y'all have a night," Wes said, quickly hopping into his truck and firing it up. Larry shook his head. "He's already mad about the raids. We can't afford to scare him off with stories of running scarecrows loose in the facility." "It's not a story, I saw it," I said. "And frankly, right now, I don't give a shit about scaring off clients. I just saw a scarecrow." A rock came screaming in from the darkness and slammed into Larry's elbow. It landed with a slap. He screamed, dropped the pen that he was holding, and cradled his arm. A welt grew, his skin reddening from the blow. "What the hell was that?" "Let me see your flashlight," I said, taking it from him. I shone the light over to where we had left the first scarecrow. It was gone. Larry, the man who never shut up, was stunned into silence. His mouth opened, but the words died on his tongue. Sweat stains grew from the armpits of his shirt, and his eyes darted back and forth near the elevator. His whole body trembled. He absent-mindedly rubbed his growing welt. I'm gonna head inside," he said, turning his attention away from the elevator to the office. "I got some paperwork too." He never reached the door. The scarecrow that Wes had freed from the pit was standing in front of it, staring at us. The elevator belt had mangled its shirt, tearing it open and exposing bloody hay inside. It didn't move, but I swear it was breathing. "How?" was all that Larry got out. Distracted as we were, another rock came crashing in and caught Larry on the shoulder. It was larger than the last, and the blow made him stumble and turn toward the thrower. Before he responded, another stone smashed Larry in the cheek. It split his skin open and blood spurted from the wound. Larry slapped his hand on the cut, blood seeping through the cracks of his fingers, and stumbled away. His eyes rolled back into his head and he crashed to the ground. Before I could help him, another projectile flew in and hit him square in the temple. A noise like a ripe melon popping open. Any consciousness that he was clinging to fell away, and his rotund body dropped like a dying ox. Blood from his head wounds pooled around his face. I shone the flashlight into the dark, and another scarecrow was standing there. At first blush, it resembled the other two, but then my eyes clued in on something that caused me to choke back vomit. The burlap bag and rope on this scarecrow's body were still wet with fresh blood. It dripped down and stained the front of the Letterman jacket that it was wearing. It was Dennis Temple, or at least a body that had been Dennis Temple. Did you kill the kid?" The scarecrow started laughing. A deep, back-of-the-throat laugh that was muffled through the blood-soaked hay. It reached behind his back and softly tossed something toward my feet. The mystery item rolled along the dirt and gravel until it came to a stop at my boot. It was a human heart. The scarecrow clapped its hands together and 3 more scarecrows emerged from the shadows around the elevator and office. 2 smaller ones dressed in red hoodies flanked a big fella. With the same disdain, they rolled their hearts to my feet as well. My mind raced for a way out of this mess. I patted my pants for my keys, but they weren't on me. I had left them in the office, which was being guarded by a sinister scarecrow. To think, I once thought this job would be less stressful than working at the town's Taco Bell. The Letterman picked up another rock and hurled it at me. Unlike Larry, I dodged it, but I wouldn't be able to dodge everything. I glanced at Larry's unmoving body. The guy was an ass, but he didn't deserve this. I wasn't sure if he was dead or not, but I didn't want to be. I turned on my heels and booked it toward the entrance to the elevator complex. Despite my plans not to do so, I glanced back. The scarecrows had gathered around his body and were laying their hands on him. In between my footfalls on the gravel and my labored breasts, they began ripping his skin away in strips. That tearing and Larry's screams filled the night sky. When he finally went quiet, it was clear what had happened. They had turned him into a scarecrow. As the gate to the complex came into view, a pair of yellow truck headlights appeared and flew toward me. They burst through the gate arm, splintering the wood and sending it tumbling end over end. The truck wasn't slowing, but the driver lay on the horn. I jumped out of the way right before it would have turned me into a grease spot. As it zoomed past, I smiled. Wes had come back. The The chasing scarecrow stopped, momentarily confused, and that slight hesitation cost them. Wes slammed into them, sending the straw men scattering into the wind. The truck came to a skidding stop just outside the office building. Wes hopped out and yelled for me to give him a hand. I didn't hesitate. I ran back as fast as my feet would fly. Wes dropped the tailgate, and he was pulling out 2 propane tanks as I caught up with him. In between my gasping breaths, Wes attached a length of orange hose to the nozzle of each tank. The hose connected to a water pressure gun, or so I thought. Wes pulled the trigger and a bright burst of orange flame roared out of the tip. "Weed burners," he said, handing me a propane tank. "Saves the pain of weeding my family plot by hand. I figured it would cook these devils up and send them back to the 7th circle of Hades." "Hell yes," I said, firing a small flame. "Why'd you come back?" "You've always been square by me, and it didn't feel mighty Christian of me to leave a good man in a lurch. How'd I be able to ask the Lord and Savior for help if I'd tucked tail and ran when one of his flock needed me?" he said with a smile. "Now let's toast some ghouls." I laughed. What in the childhood dream was this? We clinked the tips of our guns together and fanned out. Besides the original 2, there were the 4 teens and Larry. I didn't see his body among the others, but I figured he was around here somewhere. Wes walked up to the armless scarecrow who had been partially de-stuffed from the impact with the truck. With no hesitation, he pressed the trigger and burned the scarecrow to embers. As the flame ate away at the burlap bag, the monster let loose a painful yell. A white ball of light burst from the ashes and rose into the night sky, a dandelion spore catching a ride on the breeze. Before too long, it was just another white dot in a sky full of them. Wes moved on to the next victim. I came across Dennis Temple first. The accident had shorn his legs from the rest of his body. The top half was crawling along to where they had landed. Before it reconstituted itself, I aimed my gun down, sighted its burlap head, and blasted it with flames. It screamed and I grinned as the hay caught fire, curled, and burned to ash. Another white ball shot up into the sky. I moved on. Wes's demolition derby had done the lion's share of the work. These things had been stunned, and now we were just mopping up. Each time we came upon a pile of hay, we blasted it with fire until it didn't exist anymore. Within 10 minutes, every visible scarecrow had become a pile of ash that drifted in the breeze. I finally let go of the trigger. The propane tank was lighter than it had been. I pulled the trigger again and no flame came leaping out. I turned to Wes. I went a little crazy. It's hard not to. Our burning spree had brought us back around by the grain elevator. The hatch was barely visible under the gravel and kernels that had been kicked up in the fighting. Wes placed his propane tank down and wiped his sweaty brow. "Is that all of them?" "Larry," I said. "I didn't see Larry." "Is he?" I nodded. Wes made a sign of the cross. "He was an idiot most of the time, but even idiots shouldn't go out like that. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption." "Yeah," was all that I added. "We should find him or whatever he is now. If we don't, we'll find new people to, in fact, change. What even are these things and where did they come from?" "Hell," Wes said. "They came from..." He never finished the sentence. The hatch opened under him and he fell into the grain elevator pit. He let out a painful yelp as the propane tank clanged against his body. The elevator started up and Wes hollered and scrabbled away from the quickly moving belts. I trailed off. Out of the corner of my eye, a familiar figure was standing near the hatch controls. Larry, or what used to be Larry. He was one of them now. He turned his bloodied, burlap head toward me and nodded. "Oh damn," I said as Larry took his first lumbering step toward me. I tried lighting up my propane torch again, but it was empty. "Oh, come on," I tried again, and nothing happened. Larry's first few steps reminded me of a baby deer just figuring out how to walk. but it didn't stay that way. Bambi eventually found his footing and started running at me. I dropped the propane tank and booked it in the opposite direction. Larry followed. I didn't have a clue where to go. I couldn't just run away. Plus, I didn't want to abandon Wes down in the pit. The man had come riding to the rescue in his pickup. What kind of man would I be if I left him in there? Letting Larry get turned made my guts tighten. A guilt I was sure would grow with every day that I was on this side of the soil, but I couldn't change it now. The musky smell of overly wet corn caught my attention. I was near Silo 10. A divine spark set off a raging fire in my brain. I might not be able to outrun this thing, but I could trap it. I darted off through the row of grain bins until I got to a supply shed. Thankfully, Larry was lazy and never locked these. I ripped open the doors and flipped on the overhead light. On the shelf was what I had come for, a safety harness and a guide wire. I slipped on the harness and wrapped the wire coil around my arm. Before I darted back out, I grabbed a ventilator mask and put that on as well. I exited the shed and clocked Larry, now full on running. Bits of hay falling off his body with each long stride. I took off at a full sprint myself, heading for Silo 10. I kicked at the ladder latch until it came free, sending it sliding down. As soon as it hit, I hooked on one end of the guide wire to the base of the silo and the other to my harness. With the carabiner's click, I started up the ladder. I was 5 rungs up when Larry's hay hand grabbed my boot and yanked me down. I swung my free leg at him, but Straw Larry was more nimble than Human Larry had ever been. With a strength that shocked me, he caught a hold of my legs and yanked down with all his might. The tips of my fingers slipped off the rounded rung and I went crashing to the ground. The straw man helped break my fall, but it was still far enough to force all the air from my lungs. I rolled onto my stomach and away from Larry's windmilling arms. I coughed and finally caught my breath in the middle of the roll. Right after my first breath, Larry's foot found my stomach. Pain rippled through my body and I vomited. Another swift blow to my ribs caused one of them to crack, constricting my muscles around my chest. I rolled away again, but the guide wire worked like a leash at this point. I wouldn't be able to run with it still attached. Even though this wasn't my former boss, I recalled every time that he had pissed me off and let that anger strengthen me. I scrambled back up to my feet and turned to the scarecrow. He ran at me again, growling and snarling. I yanked hard on the wire, pulling it taut, and ran at Larry. The wire clotheslined him, sending him sprawling to the ground. I had hoped it would slice him in half, but knocking him down gave me enough time to make it back to the ladder and scramble up. Larry grabbed the first rung as I reached the top. I slid the ventilator over my face, unlocked the escape hatch, and threw it open. Instantly, a wave of noxious gas hit me. The silo being warm against my back earlier made sense. Something nasty and dangerous was brewing in here among the millions of kernels. Muttering a quick prayer, I climbed into the hatch and found the top rung inside the silo. This bin was almost full, so the trip down into the kernels was short. I gingerly placed a foot on the corn, and it shifted under my weight. I placed my other foot down, and despite some more shifting, I stayed level. A shadow fell over me. Larry had arrived. I wasn't sure if these things had rational thoughts, but I swear I could see the wheels turning inside its stupid burlap head. Come on down here. You come down here and you can get me. Just a tasty treat waiting for you. It stood there unmoving, unblinking, waiting. I wanted it to get in here already. Even with the mask, the gas buildup in here was intense. My eyes started watering. Larry found the wire next to his hand and picked it up. With a strength that no being made of hay should have, he yanked on the wire and pulled me toward the hatch. Sensing a wind, Larry wrapped the guide wire around his arm and started pulling me up. My body ascended and I squirmed around to stop it. I tried rocking my weight backward, hoping to tip Larry over, but he held firm. Everything that I tried to do to stop him had failed. I was getting closer to being within his arm's grasp. From the tips of his stray fingers, tiny razor-sharp thresher blade tips emerged like a cat's claws. They twitched in anticipation of the soft skin they would rip into. The idea of those blades slicing off my face focused my brain. I had to free myself. It was now or never. The loose corn ground against my boots. A kernel caught the side and shot out, ricocheting around the silo. As it bounced around, my thoughts followed suit. I glanced back. A thin layer of clumped corn kernels spread across the middle of the silo. I smiled. "Come on, big fella, pull me up." I screamed and relaxed my body. Larry kept yanking the wire, slowly bringing me up to the hatch opening. The tip of my boot found the first rung of the internal silo ladder, and I braced, both of my feet on it. I let him pull me within a few inches of his grasp, the whole time keeping my legs cocked and ready to fire. As he leaned over to pull me the rest of the way up, I pushed in close. I was face to face with the scarecrow. The stench of rotting hay and death wafted off the burlap sack. I braced my arms against the hatch opening, leaned all my weight back on my heels, and pushed off with all my might. Larry's grasp slipped, and I fell butt first into the corn. Loose kernels took to the air as my body crashed below the grain. The vibrations of thousands of corn kernels rumbled as my body sank lower. 5 seconds to get stuck, 30 to be engulfed. Larry recovered from nearly tipping in and gripped the guide wire again. He tugged with all his might, but the weight of the corn held me in place. With every slight movement of my arms and legs, I became more trapped in the grain. The pressure grew, squeezing me like a corn cocoon. If I went too far in, I'd be crushed to death. The guide wire went slack and my body dropped another inch. I wasn't sure what was happening until Larry cannonballed right near me. Even under the crushing weight of the corn, I allowed myself a smile. He thought that he was landing on solid ground, but as soon as his straw feet found the kernels, he broke through the crust and fell into a void. The rumble was instant and loud. Millions of kernels broke free and fell toward the newly formed hole in the middle of the silo. The pressure that had nearly crushed me to death had disappeared in a blink. Larry was instantly engulfed. His thresher-tipped fingers disappeared below the corn. With the crust now collapsed, my newly born body emerged from the cocoon. I hung from the guideline over the gaping hole and allowed myself to smile. Larry was somewhere in the churning grain, hopefully crushed into a hail bay. I swung myself back onto the ladder and clambered out. I slammed the escape hatch shut and I latched it. The struggle had nearly torn the bulky ventilator off my face, so I finished the job and I threw it into the dark. I took in a deep breath of fresh air, my lungs purging the gas that I had ingested, and scrambled down the side of the silo as fast as my body could go. I was so concerned with getting down that I hadn't noticed Wes standing at the bottom of the stairs, cradling a hurt arm and urging me on. "Is he dead?" "I think the only way to kill it is to burn it." "Well, how are you gonna do that if he's trapped?" I grabbed Wes's hand and placed it on the side of the silo. "Oh, this thing is just waiting for his spark." "Golly," he said, taking a step back. "You weren't the only one with wet kernels," I said. "I'll be right back." I unhooked the harness and sprinted away from Silo 10 and back toward the office. Bursting through the door, I scrambled to Larry's desk and started ripping open drawers until I found what I was looking for: an old bottle of whiskey. Never had I been thankful for somebody being an alcoholic, but tonight had been a night of firsts already. Why stop with zombie scarecrows? By the time I got back with the bottle in my hand, Wes had done the math. I grabbed his propane tank, opened up the valve, and placed it at the base of the silo. Wes started up his truck and nervously drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his foot hovering over the gas pedal. I moved to the passenger side of the truck, pulled out my lighter, and I lit the rag. It was go time. The kernels inside the silo were still shifting. Either the remains were still collapsing or Larry was trying to claw his way out. I let the fire on the rag grow. Once it had reached a critical point, I whispered a prayer and hurled it at the base of the silo. It smashed into the propane tank. I ducked into the truck and screamed to drive. Wes, hurt arm and all, didn't miss a beat. The man sent us into hyperspace and we tore ass down the gravel road, kicking up rocks as we blew past the busted entry gate. The propane container erupted. That bomb wasn't the end of the line. It was the catalyst that would ignite the bigger and dirty volatile gas inside Silo 10. The ribs of the silo flattened under the growing internal pressure. I guess those chemistry classes that I took at school weren't such a waste of time after all. We were a half-mile down the road when the silo boomed. A flash of white light illuminated the road in front of us for a fleeting second. The shock wave slammed into the truck, causing us to fishtail. Wes pulled over and we scrambled out. A huge fireball rocketed into the night sky, a Midwestern Nagasaki torching everything that it touched. "How do you like that?" Wes said, staring at the growing blaze. "I don't," I said, "but goddamn, what a beautiful sight." I'm not one to go around blaspheming, but goddamn seems like the only right word at the moment. I laughed. He was right. Goddamn indeed.